Hey music makers, welcome back to the studio. It's Dean, and today we're breaking down my latest single where I took Psalm 19 and turned it into a pop song. And I think this tutorial could be really helpful for those of you who are starting with lyrics first and building a song around those lyrics. So without wasting your precious time, let's dive in. So we're going to get into all the exciting production technical stuff, but before we do that, we need to take a step back and ask a really important question, and that is, what is the mood of our song? Since we're building our song off of predetermined lyrics, we need to read those lyrics and ask ourselves the question, is the feeling bright and happy or maybe dark and intense? We need to write these things down because these are going to help determine the kinds of sounds that we use in our song. And for me in this song, I had a few main themes that I was aiming at. Number one was the sense of discovering beautiful treasure and being in awe over it. So to express a sense of beauty, I used orchestral strings. I used an instrument called Beautiful Melody for obvious reasons, which you can find under the synthesizer menu, Classics, Beautiful Melody. I also used an instrument called the Arctic Sun, which is again under the synthesizer menu, this time under Bell, and it's like this ambient keys. It's really pretty. And then finally, I added this really reverby ambient vocal, and what I did, if I hit B on my typing keyboard, I'll pull up this space D reverb under Reverb, Space Designer. So what I did was I went to the menu, I clicked on Warped Effects, Moving Textures, and chose Ambient Current. And you can see my settings right here if you hear the sound and want to copy it. And with those few elements, I would say these capture the beauty side or the beauty elements within this song. A second theme in the lyrics of this song is this idea of tuning into something and discovering something beautiful that not everyone hears unless they tune their hearts into it. And so I use little samples like, of course, this radio tuning and this laser beam tuning, which makes sense, right? And both of these I found in the loops menu. I went to sound effects, and you can find all of these kind of cool and crazy sound effects along with a bunch of really weird vocals. So I dragged these elements into my project. I also brought in a walkie-talkie garble, an electro riser, and basically all of these elements are pointing towards the idea that we're tuning into something. And to further that idea of tuning in, I actually had my drum kit start out really ambient and then get more and more clear up into the start of the song. And I did that by hitting A on my typing keyboard and creating a high frequency automation, as we say. So with all of these elements together, this whole section of the song is like you're tuning in until finally you hit a moment of clarity when the song begins. So now that we've talked about the mood of our song and set some of the main sounds for the direction of our song, let's jump into verse 1, and I want to get into some of the nitty-gritty with you as far as what instruments I chose and how I produced this song. I started this verse by having my main chord progression in mind, and I actually went off of my main string part, which is legato, and I created a staccato string part, which means I go from long smooth notes to short choppy notes. So it helped me maintain these strings in a more rhythmic way without having these long notes that are kind of taking over my verse. Beyond that, I added a synth called the Dream Dancer playing similar chords. You can find this under the synthesizer menu, Classics and Dream Dancer. Together, those two sound like. So the strings give it that kind of classic or that beauty sound, but the Dream Dancer brings that new and that modern sound to the mix. Then after that, I added bass, and of course I used the Agile synth bass. What else am I going to use? It's under the synthesizer menu, bass. It's near the top, Agile synth bass, and so with the bass it sounds like. So nothing fancy, it's just adding some oomph to the performance. And then I come down here and I have my electronic drum kit performance. So my first kit is the Epic Electro, and then I layered it with the Crate Digger. They're both doing a kick and snare or kick and clap pattern, and it sounds like this. So groove's pretty nice, right? After that, I brought in my vocals, and I think it's important to note here that I actually started with a vocal idea with the voice memo. So I sang this melody first, and then I built my instrumentation around it so that it would fit rhythmically and melodically. So now with vocals and instruments, it sounds like this. More to be desired are they than piles of precious gold, and sweeter than the honey dripping from the honeycomb. So one thing I noticed when I got to this point in the song is I have kind of these lulls where there's just some empty space between my vocals, even between the instruments. And so I use this Antarctic sun to kind of fill in some of those places and just be a little call and response with the lead vocal. More to be desired are they than piles of precious gold, and sweeter than the honey dripping from the honeycomb. Then we move into the second half of this verse, and here's a really important point. If ever I have a 4-bar section and I'm gonna repeat that over, whether that's a verse or a chorus, the second half should progress. So in the case of this song, I added a harmony in the second half of my verse. I added a vocal sample, as well as I layered up my claps just so they hit a little harder, and it sounds like this. From the honeycomb, and by your word your servants warn, and shown your way, O Lord. So after the end of verse 1, of course it's time to move into the chorus, and so I have a few transitional elements to help lead our ear there. Number 1 is this bounty timpani. What? Timpani? But I use that and it sounds like this. I felt like that sound was pretty appropriate, seeing how I'm using a lot of orchestral strings. Then I added as well this cymbal swell that helps lead your ear into chorus 1. It's a beautiful reward. The law of God is perfect. Then on the other side of the transition, I have a couple of elements here. One is this pulsing pattern, which sends off a really cool swell that bounces around. And now going from the verse into the chorus, you can see that I've layered things up to help it progress. To start with vocals, I have my lead vocal, but I have a low harmony and a high harmony. And then on top of my Dream Dancer synth, I layered in one called the Square Bells. It's under the same menu, synthesizer, classic, Square Bells. And it has this cool kind of retro, just smooth sound to it that I really like. So with all of those elements, we have chorus 1. There's a beautiful reward. The law of God is perfect, converting the soul. So I'm going to pause there because I think that's enough for one video, but make sure you stick around as the next breakdown video is going to be about how I sampled and produced the drum sounds in the song using stock sounds within GarageBand. If you want to hear the new song in its entirety, then check out the link in the description. And until next time, this is Dean. Thanks for joining me in the studio today. I'll catch you in another video very soon.